I am not sure if I've ever actually filmed this late at night before. It is pitch black outside. I'm in my pyjamas with a nice bedtime cup of tea, but I figured since my camera was in my bedroom anyway, why not film my discussion of You Can't Keep a Good Woman Down by Alice Walker. I read this book in May as part of the Feminist Orchestra book club, which is a feminist book club that I started, and I'll leave all the relevant information and links to the Goodreads group down below. But this was our May pick. It's our third book club read and our first piece of fiction, or pieces of fiction. This is a short story collection, and they all deal not just with sexism towards women, but the form sexism can specifically take towards black women and the ways in which black women are let down by the black rights movements and are let down by women's rights movements and are doubly discriminated in that sense. I found this one a little bit difficult to talk about, although I gave it 5 stars. I'm really cautious of not wanting to sound like I know what it's like to be a black woman, because obviously I don't. I could empathise with lots of the characters in these stories, but I certainly can't relate to their specific experiences as black women, as a white woman. So I really don't mean in this video at any point to speak on the behalf of any group I'm not a part of, but I do still think this book is amazing. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It's my first Alice Walker book. I think she's most famous for having written The Colour Purple, which is a full-length novel, I believe, that deals with similar themes to the short stories in here. In fact, I was enjoying this collection so much and I was finding it so powerful that I did a little bit of research into Alice Walker herself, and her stories aren't just great, she sounds like a fabulous woman. She has a long history of being part of different political movements and supporting various different groups, as well as those that she's personally a part of. And I'd have to say I would love to read like a biography or an autobiography of Alice Walker and I'll definitely be checking out more of her fiction in the future. I know from the discussion on the Goodreads groups and just from hearing people review The Colour Purple, it seems to be a bit of a hit or miss book. I've never heard anybody say they hate Alice Walker's writing or The Colour Purple or this collection, but I noticed people either seem to love it like I did or just found it a little bit meh, and I don't know if that's just her writing style, whether it maybe just does it for other people or it doesn't do it for other people. For me, it worked. I'm completely biased, this is all my own opinion, and I think this book was fabulous. Really enjoyed all of these stories. There's definitely some I preferred to others, but there was none I hated, and so many of them would have just got 5 stars in themselves that this collection is one of my new favourite collections of short stories. What I really enjoyed about the short stories in this collection was that although there were linking themes like in most short story collections that brought the whole collection together, and there was a very powerful overarching message, each story was very individual, and I feel like almost every single one stands out quite distinctively in my head, which I think is something to say for a short story collection, because a lot of the time the stories can blend together, whereas there was a real variety in here and it tackled the issues it tackled from various different angles. Some in particular were just incredibly engaging, and they certainly weren't just political diatribes. They were really cleverly constructed, beautiful pieces of literature with very powerful messages that not just answered questions but posed questions. So let's talk about some of the stories specifically. The first one was 1955, which was quite different from a lot of the other ones actually. I think it was a very distinctive introduction to the book. It's not my favourite in the collection, but it's definitely in the top tier, and it had a bit of a comical, satirical edge that a lot of the others didn't, and there were a lot of not so subtle references to Elvis. The second story was one of my favourites, and it actually had me welling up at the end, and that was, it's a long title so I'm just going to read it. How did I get away with killing one of the biggest lawyers in the state? It was easy. And this one deals with the rape and manipulation of a young black girl. And I thought it was interesting that when the stories in this book dealt with rape, they also dealt in part with manipulation and kind of broke down some of the stereotypes about rape and showed the complexities and the ways in which rapists can manipulate their victims. I also loved Coming Apart, which dealt with the sexualization of women's bodies, but more specifically of black women's bodies, the exoticism of black women's bodies and the reduction of their bodies to kind of animals, and just how horrific it is. And the abortion was another one that just really stood out to me and left quite an impression on me. One of the ones that actually took me a little longer to process was Advancing Luna and Ida B. Wells. This one was another story that dealt with rape, and it was very difficult to read, and like I said, it was one I really had to consider and think about how I felt about it, but now that I reflect on it, I think it was one of the most powerful short stories in the collection, has left one of the greatest impressions on me, and summarises some of the most important themes in the collection to an extreme. It highlights how racism can damage the feminist and women's rights movements and our fight for women's rights, and from outside and within, and obviously demonstrates that sexism and the abuse of women can damage the civil rights movement or the fight against racism or the black rights movement. I'm trying not to give away the story, but it uses stereotypes to highlight how these stereotypes have damaged both movements and will continue to damage them if they are not dealt with in tandem. And I think you can gather by this point that I adored this collection. I think it was fabulous. I would highly recommend it. I apologise if you read out my recommendation and it's only a 3-star read for you, but I think it's worth giving a shot because I know it affected a lot of other people in the same way that it affected me. And it just contributes towards an ideology that I've always been raised to believe, which is that there's no point in supporting women's rights if you don't support workers' rights. There's no point in supporting workers' rights if you don't support the rights of black people. There's no point in supporting the rights of black people if you don't support the rights of the LGBTQ community, because if you allow the oppression of another group, it completely undermines what you're trying to do and can bring down the progress you make for another group. I think that's something both this book and last month's book reinforced for me. Last month's book was Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own, which dealt with wealth as well as sex, specifically women not possessing wealth and what that prevents them from doing in life. And again, it just reinforced that belief in my mind that there is absolutely no point in only supporting the rights of one group or only fighting for the rights of one group. So yeah, I think I'm done here. I hope you enjoyed this review and discussion. Please keep it going in the comments down below. I'd love to talk about this collection with you. And if you can recommend any more of Alice Walker's work to me, then please do. And until next time guys, happy reading. I'll see you again soon. Bye! Hi guys! So I'm here today to film the intimidating TBR tag